Hello everybody and welcome back to Norwich Talk for another transfer rumour video. Yes, another one. This video I decided to make literally about 2 minutes ago as I saw this rumour on Twitter, courtesy of an article from Paddy Davitt on the Pinkin, of which within that article his source is teamtalk.com. As ever, these articles links will be left in the description down below, so make sure you go and give them a read. And I'm going to start doing this in these videos. I'm going to go and encourage you to sort of do your own research as well on this player. Obviously these videos are sort of a tool for you to use in terms of getting to know these players a little bit better, but I do encourage you to go and look this player up yourself, because then you find out stuff that I perhaps might have missed. However, I will be giving you some information. I've done as much as I can on the internet in a very short space of time for the player named Giorgos Giakoumakis. Please, as ever, correct my pronunciation in the comments down below if I've got that right. But I'm going to go for Giorgos Giakoumakis. I'm going to do my best to avoid saying his name because I have absolutely no doubt I'll be messing it up many times if I was to attempt it a few times in this video. But it's a very interesting rumour, a very exciting one at that. In a few podcasts and sort of to people sort of behind the scenes, I've been saying that I really want to see Norwich City sign a striker, and this would be a very, very impressive signing for Norwich City. Now, as ever, to my side, you'll see our little note collection, which you can follow along during the video, but we are going to go through what we know about him, as well as at the end of the video, ask a couple of questions about what this could mean for the future of a few strikers at the club currently, and potentially sort of what Norwich's budget could look like for the rest of the summer window, because this does seem like it would be a fairly hefty it would take a fairly hefty chunk out of the transfer budget. But nonetheless, we'll go through what we know. So what do we know? We know that he is 26 years old, he is Greek, and he is a striker standing at 6'1". Very interesting. His height, suggests that he's more of a physical player. Currently playing for VVV-Venlo in the Eredivisie. I'll be referring to them as Venlo. I know I embarrassed myself for the PAOK video where I kept calling them PAOK, which makes me cringe thinking about it, but I'll be referring to them as Venlo. His contract reportedly runs out in the summer of 2022. Venlo are currently 16th in the Eredivisie out of 18 teams, so they are fighting a relegation battle. And for Venlo, he scored 24 goals in 26 games in the league this season. That is absolutely remarkable. Venlo have scored 39 goals in the league this season, so Giakoumakis' 24 makes up for 61.5% of their goals, which is absolutely outrageous, especially for a top flight team. But that suggests perhaps why they're struggling a bit, because they are seemingly relying on one man for their goals. I've got here in front of me, as I said in the last video, when you see me looking down, it's just me looking at my notes. The looming relegation makes the transfer more likely to happen, which I think we can all agree on, to be honest with you, as well as the fact that his contract reportedly runs out in the summer next season. Which, again, if he was to come to Norwich, he would be fighting a relegation battle, but I'd like to think that the goals would be split a bit more evenly among the players. You look at the 1920 season, we were relying on Cantwell and Pukki for goals, but there is a lesson to be learned from that, isn't there? A little bit more about what we know, what I know. According to the article that Paddy wrote, he would qualify for a work permit, which is massive because these sort of post-Brexit regulations have made it very difficult to make signings, for Stuart Webber to make signings. He said in an interview that I don't think we would have been able to sign Buendia, Pukki as well under the current regulations. I think Giannoulis as well just about sort of scraped through with the correct amount of points, but his experience that he's got for Greece means he should be able to qualify for one. He's played 6 times for his country, scoring 1 goal. I've got here that this season is a bit of a breakthrough season for him, because I was looking through his goal scoring record and he hasn't really been too prolific playing in sort of the Greek First Division, but there really isn't that much data sort of accessible that I can see in terms of seeing the goals that he scored, and sort of the numbers that I was looking at that were available weren't brilliant. So I've got down here at the age of 26, it's a breakthrough season for him, which is remarkable. So if he was to join Norwich, he'd be coming on form. And the article from teamtalk.com says that he's been put, or I think it might be Paddy's actually, says that he's been put on red alert in terms of other teams in England showing interest. And it's no surprise, is it? When you're scoring 61.5% of your team's goals in the top flight, you're going to get noticed, aren't you? I've broadened my horizons as well in terms of material for research to who scored as of the recommendation from Mr. Connor Southwell, which outlines his strengths and weaknesses. Now his strengths are in quotations finishing, aerial duels and headed attempts. Now, just to talk a little bit about his strengths, finishing, of course, you look at his goal scoring record, it speaks for itself. Aerial duels and headed attempts are very interesting. As I mentioned earlier, 6'1", Norwich City don't really have that to a brilliant quality at the moment. You've got Jordan Hugo, who offers the physicality, can win a header, but doesn't really score that many goals. He said in an interview that he doesn't really judge his game off scoring goals, which is probably fair enough. But when you get into the Premier League, you're going to need someone to be prolific, aren't you? And we'll get into sort of the discussion around Timu Pukki and who would be the main man if... apologies, I'm going to have to get his name again. Giakoumakis, if he was to join, who would be the main man? But we'll talk about that at the end of the video. That's the last question I'm going to answer. But yeah, who scored, saying his strength is aerial duels and headed attempts, suggests that that would be an alternative to Timu Pukki, perhaps. Now, there was a discussion, wasn't there, sort of last season, for the majority of last season, as to sort of this idea of a plan B. I'm now on the side of, and I think we all are, to be honest with you, of what Russell Martin said, which I think he's obviously learned from Daniel Farke, which is do plan A better. Now, I think Daniel Farke would be able to coach Giakoumakis into being a better finisher and sort of really fit into the system as opposed to sort of feeding off crosses. Again, that's Daniel Farke's job, not mine. Now, interestingly, in terms of this topic of sort of coaching to improve to fit the style of play here a bit more, it says his weaknesses are passing and offside awareness. I'm going to leave offside awareness alone. That's just something you should know as a footballer. I don't really want to sort of say anything about that, to be honest with you. But passing is a weakness, which is interesting because Norwich City's philosophy is built around the idea of just constantly passing the ball. You look at Timu Pukki, he is very good at finding other players on the pitch. Jordan Hugo, not so much. Adam Idah should be, really, because he's sort of really evolving his game at a very young age around this sort of Daniel Farke philosophy, isn't he? So all I really say about this bit is I hope that Daniel Farke will be able to coach Giakoumakis into being a better passer of the ball. The age of 26 is just before your prime, so he should still... And I'm not saying that beyond sort of your prime you can't learn. You look at like Alex Tettey is a brilliant example. He's 35 now, and he's still evolving as a player in terms of his passing game. But 26 is still a great age to be learning to sort of evolve your game completely. So I do trust Daniel Farke to be able to coach this weakness out of him, which is according to who scored. It potentially couldn't even be might not even be a weakness. It's just who scored telling me that. But yeah, I think that's very interesting. Now, in terms of that's all we know, right? And in terms of facts, I'm going to leave the facts alone because I want to talk a little bit about how this compares to sort of last time in terms of the intent of the transfer to the last time we were in the Premier League. Now, I will just say quickly as well, the article from Team Talk is saying that he's valued at 30 million euros, which I'm going to leave alone for the sake of, if we talk about transfer budget every video, we're just going to say the same things, aren't we? So if you want my views, or if you want to go off your own views, which is totally fair enough, then go and watch a previous video of me talking about transfer budget. Maybe look at my Twitter as well, at Ben_Ambrose, Ben_Ambrose23, get my own Twitter right, to see my views on sort of Norwich's transfer budget. But I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to say Norwich will spend the money. Sure, we'll pretend they will for this particular transfer. But you look at the last time Norwich got promoted to the Premier League, obviously circumstances were slightly different in that a lot of the money was being invested in the training facilities, etc., etc. But the striker we brought in to sort of help Timu Pukki was Josip Drmic. He was a free transfer, really not a very prolific striker. And if you compare that to this time around, that is considerably different. And you look at I think it was TalkSport the other day, they were talking about Norwich's lack of ambition in the past. Now, the quote I think that was used with the tweet was sort of taken out of context a little bit. And if you actually watch the video itself, it's not as bad as what's being made out. I think the idea really from, I think his name's Simon Jordan, is that Norwich do seem a little bit more ambitious this time around. And if Norwich were to sign a player like Giorgos Giakoumakis, it really would sort of tell a different tale compared to the last time Norwich went up. Big money on a prolific striker is the complete opposite to a free transfer for Josip Drmic. So that really, really excites me. I would be very interested to see how he does in the Premier League. Now, my last question that I have that I'm going to talk about before I put a few to you for the comments down below is, what does this mean for Norwich City's other strikers? Because they do actually have an abundance of strikers at the moment, don't they? We've got four. One's out on loan in Josip Dermic, but you've got Timu Pukki, Adam Eder, Jordan Hugo and Josip Dermic. Now, Josip Dermic, I'll get out of the way nice and quick. He won't be here next season, whether that's a permanent or... I think his contract runs out in the summer following. So yeah, he'll probably get sent out on loan again with the other team paying his wages. Don't know how that will go. He won't be playing for Norwich City next season. Can rule that one out immediately. But for the rest of the strikers in Pukki, Eder and Hugo, it begs a very interesting question. Timu Pukki, I think, is the easiest one to talk about in that. I think he will still be Norwich's starter. He can't not be. He scored 25 goals this season, hasn't he? I really want to see him win the Golden Boot as well. I think he can. But equally, I think Ivan Toney's on 28, isn't he? So it's going to be kind of difficult for him to catch up. Although it's only 3 goals, anything can happen. You know, Pukki's just scored a championship hat-trick, which seemed almost impossible at times, but that has happened. But I do think Timu Pukki will still be Daniel Farke's main man, without question. However, it will be nice for him to have a quality striker in backup to him, in terms of bringing one in that is in Giorgos Giakoumakis. So I think that answers that one immediately. Pukki will still be the main man. Now you've got Adam Eder, who is 19 years old currently, or 20. Either way, he is very, very young, where if we were to sign Giakoumakis, I think Eder would perhaps go out on loan. Eder has been very unfortunate this season in the sense that I think a lot of us expected, especially Billy Dunthorne, little mention for you there, Bill. He was really excited to see, and I was as well, excited to see Adam Eder this season because I think we all sort of anticipated that this would be his breakthrough season. We saw splashes of him in the Premier League, didn't we? And we thought, right, we've now dropped down a division. Josip Dermic seems to have just gone. So this was really his chance to sort of break through into the first team and sort of prove to be a very valuable prospect, which he still is, by the way. He scored that goal against Huddersfield. We were all excited, weren't we? And then he got injured, he got sent off. And then he couldn't obviously get back into the team because Timu Pukki really picked up his form and just started scoring relentlessly. So I do think that, especially given the fact that we will be going back up to the Premier League fairly soon, I think a loan for Adam Eder would make sense, unless he's happy to sort of stick around, be a third or fourth choice striker. I don't think that's the case. I think it'll be the same for Sebastian Soto. You'll see him, I don't know why I've said it like that, Sebastian Soto. I think he'll be going out on loan, to be honest with you, to perhaps a championship club. As to where that team would be in the championship, I don't really know. I think you would want the promise of first team football, whether it's a relegation fight, whether it's a team pushing for playoffs, whether it's a mid-table team. I think very much, if we were to sign Giakoumakis, we would see Adam Eder going out on loan to the championship. So I think that answers that one. And then you've got Jordan Hugo, which is a player that Norwich City have spent not a considerable amount of money on. I think it's like 2.5 million with a few add-ons, isn't it? And I can imagine getting promoted will increase that price, as it would for all the players we've signed this season. But I think Jordan Hugo would happily stay on as a third choice striker, to be honest with you. I've described him here as a physical backup to Timu Pukki, which is literally what he is. He stepped in a couple of times this season, scored a couple of goals. He's done all right. I don't think he has been as impactful as someone like Jordan Rhodes was in the 18-19 campaign, but that's purely through not playing as much. There was that spell, you've got the Cardiff, the Bristol City game, where he scored a couple of goals. I think it was 3-2, wasn't it? And then he got injured. It was very unfortunate. But I've got down here, he seems to be happy to sort of be that influential figure in the dressing room, which we know is very important to sort of Norwich City's culture at the moment. You need a very positive dressing room, and you look at all these, now maybe I'm reading into it a little bit too much, but you look into sort of these City View videos from Norwich City on their YouTube channel, which are fantastic, by the way. The Huddersfield one has been the best one so far, obviously because we won 7-0, but Jordan Hugo seems like a fantastic character, and even though he's not playing as much as he would obviously would like to, because as a footballer you're going to want to play week in, week out, aren't you? He still seems to be happy, and you look at his relationship with a player like Max Aarons, it's very positive, isn't it? And he seems to be having a very positive influence. And to be honest with you, I as I said, I do think he would be happy to perhaps be maybe a little bit of a bench warmer. It feels weird calling him that. It feels a bit harsh, but I do think that would very much be the case. So just to run you through that again, you've got Pukki as the main man, Eder out on loan for me, Dermic, see you later, Soto, who I forgot to mention at the beginning of this little monologue, out on loan, of course, and Hugo as sort of a third choice, positive impact. off the bench, sort of seeing games out. That's sort of how I like Jordan Hugo, to be honest with you. And obviously he got his goal against Huddersfield, which was great. And it's a nice little reward for his sort of patience, really, to be honest with you. But yeah, this would be a very, very interesting signing. I am very excited for this to potentially happen. Do I think it will happen? I'm not too sure. If he was to sign for Norwich, I don't think it would be for 30 million euros. I think you can see Webber doing his little what I love to do on FM, just throwing additional fees in there from sort of a base like 15 million perhaps. Obviously, in terms of clauses, you've got staying up. And beyond that, I have no idea. Maybe if he hits a certain amount of goals, maybe that would impact it. I don't know. But yeah, this is a very, very good footballer, a very prolific striker. I cannot emphasise how impressive. Not that I need to, but I can't emphasise how impressive it is that he scored 24 goals in 26 league games, which is 61.5% of a team's goals. Ooh, that's a very difficult thing to say. I don't think it is, but it's ridiculous either way. My brain is melting at the sheer prospect of it. But this is a very good footballer, and I've been saying that Norwich need to sign a world-beating striker, and this man fits the bill for me personally. But yeah, very exciting signing. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. The questions I'll ask: what do you think his role would be at Norwich City? Are you putting him ahead of Timu Pukki? No, I don't think you are at the beginning of the season if he was to sign. How impressed are you, by the way, by this 61.5% of Venlo's goals? It's ridiculous. In terms of a work permit, yeah, he can definitely come. Fingers crossed anyway. And there was one more question that has totally slipped my mind, which is going to annoy me. I'll post it in the comments down below when I remember it though. But yes, thoughts, leave them in the comments down below. If you enjoy these videos, perhaps consider subscribing. If you could leave a little thumbs up on the video, I would really appreciate that. I believe we will see you next, probably after the Derby game, where Norwich could potentially have been promoted to the Premier League if we beat Derby and Swansea and Brentford lose. That is just sort of a ticking time bomb, really, isn't it? Norwich City are going to get promoted back to the Premier League. So I'm very excited for that. Very excited for you to have potentially enjoyed this video. So until next time, I'll see you again very, very soon.